जय हिंद दोस्तों। मैं आपका होस्ट नमन राज गुप्ता आज आप सबको गणतंत्र दिवस की बहुत बहुत हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं देना चाहता हूं। आज की लेक्चर की शुरुआत से पहले मैं दो पंक्तियां कहना चाहता हूं जो मैं उम्मीद करता हूं आप सबके लिए काफ़ी प्रेरणादायक हो। चल पड़े हैं, चल पड़े हैं तो पहुंचेंगे भी। चल पड़े हैं तो पहुंचेंगे भी और पहुंच के सजाएंगे मंजिल कुछ इस कदर कि चलते हुए रुक जाएं, देखे और कह उठे वाह। गूंज उनकी तालियों की फिर गूंज उठे यहाँ वहाँ कहाँ कहाँ। गूंज उनकी तालियों की फिर गूंज उठे यहाँ वहाँ कहाँ कहाँ। और गूंजे उस तालियों की गूंज से नम्रता मेरी और भी नम्र हो जाए। चल पड़े हैं तो पहुंचेंगे भी। इन्हीं पंक्तियों के साथ हम आज की लेक्चर नंबर 36 की शुरुआत करने जा रहे हैं। आज आप सबके सामने एक ऐसा पॉलिटिकल थिंकर है जो कि ना ही बहुत कंट्रोवर्शियल है पर बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण भी। He is none other than Karl Marx. You guys might have heard that workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose than your chains. Philosophers until now have only interpreted the world in various ways, but what matters is to change it. There is no birth without a blood. The opponents of this particular thinker, they basically calls him a Julius Caesar, whose ghost basically haunt the people who are the enemy of him. And in our case, the enemy of him are none other than the capitalist class. In his terms, the bourgeoisie class. He was troubled by the consequences of capitalist class, that is the extreme exploitation of the workers. The alienation which was brought by the capitalist supply chain automation system of production. He was against them and he wanted to give the dignity to the workers which they deserve. It was not just the working per se, but it is their creativity, it is their individuality which was getting destroyed in this capitalist system. As per Adam Smith theory of invisible hand in his magnum opus, that is the wealth of nation, he says that if the principle of invisible hand that operates, the drive of demand and supply will lead to the prosperity. But as per Marx, he strongly condemned his idea. He says that yes, it will lead to prosperity, but not to the common man, but only to the few capitalist or elite class of the society. The worker class will get nothing but the exploitation. This is the intensity of this thinker that we are going to talk in today's lecture. So without further ado, let's get started with lecture on Karl Marx. But before moving further, I would love to have you all subscribe to our YouTube channel, that is UPSC by Naman Raj Gupta. Before starting, it is always advisable to know what is the relevance of this particular thinker or any topic in PSIR in exam, what is the weight is. So I have listed down few of the questions as you can see on the board which will show the importance of Marx for our exam per se. मार्क्स सिर्फ एज अ थिंकर इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है दोस्तों, हमारे एग्जाम के लिए भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा रेलेवेंट है, क्योंकि मार्क्स ही एक ऐसा थिंकर है जिसके नाम पे पूरा एक डिसिप्लिन बना हुआ है पॉलिटिकल साइंस एंड इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन में, जिसे हम कहते हैं मार्क्सिज्म. देयर इज नो स्कूल known as Lockeism, Hobbesism, and etc. But we have Marxism. Why? because of the intensity of the thought that he possessed in his works. That is why he is also regarded as one of the greatest philosophers of all time, right? His theories are not just the consciousness, or they are not just the ideas, but his theories were based on praxis that we are going to see. What is praxis? Practice is basically theory leading to action, or action which is based on theory. And what was theory according to him? His theory was truth that he labeled his idea as. They are not just the false consciousness, but they are the truth of the society based on which he asked the workers of the world to unite, because they were exploited by the bourgeoisie classes, and they had nothing to lose but their chains, right? So these are some of the list of questions. You can read it out and you will know the relevance of Marx and his topics, his concept of alienation, his concept of class, his concept of freedom and liberty, his concept of human essence and alienation, his very important concept of base and superstructure. This all becomes very important in our exam of political science and international relation optional paper, right? So with this, let's get started with the introduction, that is life and time of Karl Marx. What is the importance of doing the life and time of Marx? So as per Lasky, he says that every thinker is child of his time. And equally, it becomes important for us to know the time of Marx as well, which will also tell us the various influences which was on Marx, right? Hegel was one of the very influential figure in the life of Marx. His idea of dialectic idealism is kind of great influence on Marx's idea of dialectic materialism, right? We will see each and every topic in detail, and until and unless you all will get convinced and comment me down that yes sir, I have understood this topic very comprehensively, I will not choose to move further. Okay, so with this, let's get started. As a university student, Karl Marx joined a movement known as Young Hegelian, who was strongly critical about the political and cultural establishment of the day. Right? So, Hegel, we will see his ideas as well in brief. His idea was mainly circumventing around the political and cultural establishment of his time. His idea was against the establishment of his time, right? Why? Because of the unwanted consequences. जितनी दिक्कतें थी उस टाइम के पॉलिटिकल कल्चरल इस्टेब्लिशमेंट में, उनको लेकर हेगल ने अपनी डायलेक्टिक आइडियलिज्म का आइडिया डिराइव किया, which influenced Marx and which led Marx to join a club known as Young Hegelian Movement. He became a journalist in later of his time, and the radical nature of his writing would eventually get him expelled by the government of Germany, France, and Belgium. His ideas were so controversial during his time that country chose to expel him from their respective countries, and this also led Marx to live a life of nomadic, where he was moving from one country to different country for livelihood, for sustenance. But his ideas were revolutionary. Why his idea was revolutionary? Because his idea was anti-establishment of his time. as we all know that western countries jitne bhi the, they were mainly influenced and driven by the liberal ideas, a liberal school, that is liberalism. And his idea is kind of challenge to the established liberalism. That is why we have Marxism as an independent school. We don't have Lockeism, we don't have Millism, right? JS Millism. We don't have any other school. Though we have father of liberalism and etc. But we don't have Millism or Lockeism or Hobbesism and etc. But we have Marxism. Why? Because it is a revolutionary idea which was anti-establishment of his time. It was challenging the entire liberal capitalist notion of their time. Right? That is why we have an independent school called as Marxism. In 1848, Marx and fellow German thinker, that is Friedrich Engels. Remember this very, very important name, Friedrich Engels, published the Communist Manifesto, which produced their concept of socialism as a natural result of conflicts inherent in capitalist system. Why Friedrich Engels become important here? Friedrich Engels was a good friend of Marx. Marx was a vociferous reader. He used to read and write, read and write, read and write. He never bothered upon the compilation of his works. It was Friedrich Engels who is mainly responsible for the compilation of the various works of Marx. Right? So they both, in collaboration, they launched the Communist Manifesto, which is also the magnum opus of Marx. Right, which introduced their concept of socialism, right, which introduced their system of economy, that is socialism, as a natural result of the conflict inherent in the capitalist system. Because of the conflict, because of the issues that were part of the capitalist system, issues like extreme exploitation of the working classes, the destruction of the individuality of the individual, right? And their deterioration of the standard of living, their destruction of dignity. These are some of the inherent conflicts or issues of the capitalist system, which led Marx to propound his idea, that is socialism, in his magnum opus, that is Communist Manifesto. कैपिटलिस्ट सिस्टम सिर्फ एक इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम ही नहीं था. It was mainly driven by Adam Smith's idea of laissez-faire state, right? Or his predecessor. They promoted the idea of night watchmanship state, right? Where the state has only the role of watchmanship. जहां पे स्टेट का कुछ भी काम नहीं था other than having a role of a watchman state, right? But what was the consequence? उस वॉचमैन स्टेट का कॉन्सिक्वेंस क्या था? द ग्रेट डिप्रेशन ऑफ 1928, right? Great Depression of 1928. What happened? Due to negligence of few capitalist class, the entire world suffered. The entire world economy collapsed. Right? This is what led Marx to think, no, when in the liberal economy or when in the laissez-faire economy prosperity blooms, it only benefits few elite section of the society, that is the rich class. But when it collapses, when it suffers, the working class get crumbled. The working class gets mostly affected. and not the elite class. This is what led Marx to propound his idea of socialism. This is what led Marx to propound his idea of communism, where there should be a state to ensure that resources are distributed equally. Right? So this is the idea that we are going to see in further detail, which accrued Marx the name, that is, Marx is the greatest philosopher of all time. Right? So let's see further. Marx later moved to London, where he lived rest of his life, and there in London he published the work that is Das Kapital. What is Das Kapital? Das Kapital was basically talking about the inevitable tendencies towards self-destruction, which is part of capitalism. Right? As we all know that Europe, a country of leisure, a country of happy times, right? There the capitalism was kind of bringing a vice to leisure. Vice to leisure. What does this mean? यूरोप में पहला एक लीजर का कल्चर हुआ करता था, जहां पे लोग काम के साथ अपनी लीजर भी बहुत ज्यादा इंजॉय करते थे. बट ड्यू टू शॉर्टेज ऑफ वर्किंग क्लास, ड्यू टू शॉर्टेज ऑफ वर्कर्स, जो कैपिटलिस्ट आइडियोलॉग हैं वो लीजर को एज अ बैड प्रैक्टिस प्रमोट करने लग गए. क्यों? क्योंकि बहुत कॉमन बात है, अगर लोग ज़्यादा लीजर में इंगेज होंगे, लोग ज़्यादा इंजॉय करेंगे, तो उनकी वर्किंग क्लास की जो शॉर्टेज है वो कभी फुलफिल नहीं हो पाएगी. राइट? इसीलिए उन्होंने एक ऐसा एजेंडा, एक ऐसा आइडियोलॉजी यूरोप में फैलाया कि जो लोग ज़्यादा लीजर में इंगेज करते हैं अपने आप को, दे आर काइंड ऑफ वेस्ट, दे आर वेस्ट रिसोर्सेस. And this is how they propagated their ideology, which was a self-destruction tendencies of capitalist class. Because human beings are not machines. Human beings are not machines. Right? Human beings are social animals. We need our own leisure time. We need our own time of recreation. We need our own time for self-enjoyment. Right? And this was what capitalist class was propounding, and which was ultimately leading to the idea of self-destruction. They were promoting the idea of supply chain mechanism, automation, and etc., where people have to employ themselves for 12 to 16 hours a day, 16 hours a day, which was kind of killing their self, which was kind of killing their individuality. Despite being humans, they are living the life of animals. And this is why Karl Marx stood up for the proletariat class, for the working class, for the exploited class, not thief, exploited class, or have-nots class. This is just the introduction. Once you get the news of this entire idea, जब आप इनकी थ्योरीज को डिटेल में जानने शुरू करेंगे, then you will be more and more fascinated about his theories. Once you start immersing yourself in his theories, you will understand the true essence who the Marx was and what is the Marxism as a doctrine is. फिर आपको रट्टा नहीं मारना पड़ेगा. I assure you that. Each and everything will be self-remembered. And एक बात मैं आपको बता दूं, each and every individual of this world is somewhere influenced by the idea of Marx. Nobody is left behind or neglected in this particular world. अगर आज दुनिया में इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ता है तो इस भारत का कॉमन मैन सफर करता है. दिस वॉज द आइडिया अगेंस्ट विच मार्क्स वॉज टॉकिंग. अगर आज ब्लैक मनी स्विस अकाउंट्स पे जाते हैं, भेजे जाते हैं, तो इंडिया का कॉमन मैन सफर करता है क्योंकि उसकी टैक्स से वो अमाउंट स्विस बैंक में जा रहा है. And this was against what Marx was talking about. So I assure you, once you get to know the Marx, you will understand his essence. Because Marx is not just a matter. Marx was not just the person. He is an idea. And that idea is Marxism. Right? So what is the prominence of Marx? Right? Marx तो नाम बहुत ही सुना है, नाम तो सुना ही होगा. But what is the prominence? The philosophers until now have only interpreted the world in various ways. But the point is how to change it. Marx is the individual who never fallen in the trap of idea. Right? For him, what matters was the matter. For him, what mattered was action. Right? He propounded the idea of praxis. What is praxis? Praxis is nothing but an action based on theory. The philosophers who were predecessor to Marx or who were before Marx, they have only given their theories, their interpretation of the world in various ways. But that did not accrue any benefit to the world. That did not bring any change in this particular world. It either did not lead to the kind of removal of the suffering from this particular world, right? Because their theory was a mere idea. They were never action driven. They never focused on what ought to be done. They only focused about their ideas, their interpretation. And this is where Marx emphasizes on action. And he says that philosophers until now have only interpreted the world in various ways, but the point is how to change it. And because of this, Marx is certainly one of the greatest of all political philosophers. Right? Basic ideas. What my theory will benefit to the most poorest of this society. Right? It is just my false consciousness. It is just my mental pleasure. That yes, I am able to propound certain idea, but what benefit it will lead to the most people or most common people who are suffering on the ground. Right? And here comes Marx with his action intensive theories to bring revolution, so as to help the exploited working class in the society. Right? That is why no other philosophers has such an influence like that of Karl Marx. Marx himself has written, philosophers have only interpreted the world, but what matters is to change it. And Marx has propounded his theory of praxis, that is action based on theory and theory leading to action. Right? What is the relation between action and theory? Action and theory, or so as to say theory and action. What is the relationship between it? He calls his theory as a truth. He calls his theory as truth. And first he comes out with a theory, right? And that is what was also the kind of flow of his life. He first given a theory in his book, that is the Communist Manifesto. Then he later on released Das Kapital, where he explicited, where he highlighted the self-destructive tendencies of capitalism, and hence he propounded the action what ought to be done, that is the revolution, because his idea was there is no birth without a blood, कभी भी खून के बिना जन्म नहीं हो सकता. That is why he calls his theory as the truth of the world, or the dark truth of the world. And then he propounds the idea of action, that is revolution. Right? So this is all about his idea of praxis. That is why he is regarded as one of the greatest among the political philosophers of his time. Right? So what are the themes of his idea? What are the themes, right? So Marx was concerned with the extreme exploitation of the poor by the capitalist class, right? Hence he wanted to end the exploitation and to give a life of dignity to the poor. He was critic of capitalism. He considered capitalism as inhuman. Right? Since Marx is a critic of capitalism, he is believer in socialism. Right? Because during his time, and even when there was a Cold War era, there is a power tussle between two great ideologies of this world, that is liberalism and socialism. USA and USSR, right? The power blocks, the two power blocks of Cold War era. If you are not in the side of USA, you are on the side of USSR. That was the general tendencies. I am not talking about NAM and etc. Right? These were the exception. These have nothing to do with the major world powers, but these were the two major world rivalries of his time. And this is what is the idea or the brainchild of Marx. Right? The entire power tussle or power block, the entire one side was the brainchild of Marx. If you have to fight the capitalist bloc, you have to join the socialism communism bloc. And that is what happened. Even in the year 1917, right, when the Tsarist regime, which was holding power almost for 300 years in Russia, the individual known as Vladimir Lenin, he kind of revolutionized and overthrew this Tsarist regime. And it was brainchild of none other than the Karl Marx. He was greatly influenced. Mr. Lenin was greatly influenced by Marx and his idea of communism. And that is where he established a country known as Soviet Union, a USSR. Right? So these are some of the theme of his idea, right? So major story or major kind of enemy of his doctrine or philosophy or ideology is extreme exploitation of the poor by the capitalist class. He will propound two classes, the one who are The one are basically the exploited and the others are exploiting. The exploited and exploiting. The capitalist and the working class. The capitalist and the working class. The haves and have nots. His basic idea is based on matter. He simply says that whoever whoever is the individual, if he have a matter, what is matter? The resources, the money. If someone have a matter, that is bank balance, money, resources, he will be exploiting whom? He will exploiting the working class, and that is what lead to the accumulation of the wealth in the hand of capitalist class. So this is the theme of Marx's work that we are going to see in greater detail. So before understanding his idea of socialism, let's see what is the difference between socialism and capitalism, or how socialism is different from capitalism. Capitalism denotes private ownership of means of production. What are means of production? Basically land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and etc. Right? In economy, basic economic, right? So when these all means of production are owned by any individual, are owned by any private individual, then it is a capitalist economy. Example, USA. Example, the European countries, right? Where the means of production, factories, industries, mills, and etc., they were all owned by the private individual. And that is how the entire economy was operating. Right? In capitalism, the motive of production is profit rather than the need. What is the important or significance of this particular line? That the motive of production is profit than the need. Understand the situation of COVID. Understand the situation of COVID. During COVID, in global south countries like Africa, even in India, people were, even in Brazil, right? People were dying due to no availability of the vaccines. But companies like Johnson and Johnson and etc., they were not leasing their manufacturing unit in countries like India, who could efficiently do mass production for the rest of the world. Why? Because their main aim was profit. If they have discovered something, they own a profit on that. They deserve a profit. Their motive is profit. And that is what is the motive of capitalist class. That is what is the motive of capitalist class, right? It is not based on the need, rather it is based on the profit. Socialism is a modern philosophy. It emerged as a reaction against capitalism. Why reaction against capitalism? Because of the ill consequences of profit motive. They were going to the extent of extreme exploitation just for their motive of profit. They were making the workers work for elongated hours of time, like 18 to 22 hours of a day, just for the sake of profit. And this is how socialism emerged as a reaction against the capitalist society and its ill consequences. It is based on the realization of inhuman nature of capitalism. According to socialist, industrial society can be based on socialist principles. Even they believe that the industrial society can also be based on the socialist principle. What is the example? The best example is Russia. The best example is China. Okay, where even the industrial society, right, can be based on the socialist principles. What is the socialist principle? Where state will own the resources or means of production, and state will also ensure that there is equitable distribution. There is equitable distribution of profit among the people. It is not necessary to base it on the capitalist principle, right? Why it is not necessary? Because as per Marx, capitalist principle was only leading to the accumulation of wealth in the hand of few. It was only leading to the idea of wealth and income inequality, right? And to solve all this issue, he came with his idea of socialism. Where the state will not only have the role of watchmanship, but state will intervene in the economy and also own the means of production, so that the profits and wealth can be distributed equally among the people. And this is how the idea of socialism is different, to be specific, more unique from capitalism, right? So how Marx defined socialism, right? We have seen how socialism was different from capitalism, but how Marx defined socialism, or what was the term socialism as per Marx? He calls his socialism scientific, and socialism before his socialism as utopian. So very basic question might arise here, क्या मार्क्स ही पहले इंसान थे जिन्होंने सोशलिज्म टर्म कॉइन किया? नहीं दोस्तों, मार्क्स वॉज नॉट द वन. देयर वेयर thinkers, there were philosophers like Robert Owen, or Louis Blanc, etc. They were already very, very eminent philosophers who have given the theory of socialism. Even on the idea of Louis Blanc, the entire idea of French Revolution, that is of equality, fraternity, was based. We cannot say that Marx was the first thinker who propounded the idea of socialism. No. But why Marx socialism becomes important? Because his idea was mainly based on action and not just the mere theory. He propounded the idea of revolution. We know the theory, we know the truth that there is an extreme exploitation which is going on in the society, but what we are doing about it? And that is why he will call all this thinker as an utopian. Why utopian? Because they have only given their theories. They have not emphasized on the action. And even if they have emphasized on the action, they have kind of emphasized or given more importance to the peaceful ways, right? And Marx says that peaceful ways cannot lead us to the establishment of socialism or communism. Why? Because there is no birth without blood. To bring change in the society, one must resort to the violent manner. Because the ideologues or ideology of capitalist society is so strongly held in the society that without a violent revolution, the propounder or advocate of capitalist ideologies will never allow socialism to get traction in the society, right? That is why Marx is suggesting the idea of violent revolution. He calls his theory scientific and socialism before him as utopian, as I have already told you. Marx was not the first person to give the idea of socialist ideas, right? Socialist ideas emerged during the time of French Revolution. The idea of equality, fraternity, and all are basically the seed behind the idea of socialism, right? That everyone should be equal. And what is the basic root behind inequality? It is basically the unequal distribution of wealth. If I am Naman, if I have a friend called, let's say, Raj, if I have X amount of money, if he has, let's say, X plus or 20X amount of money, if I have, there will be genuine inequality between both of us. Our way or standard of living will differ from each other, right? Will be different. And that is what will lead to inequality in the society. And let's say if there is a state which will ensure that both Naman and Raj and all the other person in the society will get equal wealth, there will be no inequality, right? So the entire idea of French Revolution, that was equality and fraternity, was based on this very basic premise, which will also be one of the major influence in the idea of Marx. During French Revolution, there were socialists, basically left revolutionaries like Louis Blanc. Later on, there were socialist ideas in other countries of Europe, right? So socialism was kind of insidiously spreading throughout the European continent. Britain's Robert Owen, who is also known as father of cooperative movements, right? So just to give you a basic idea behind Robert Owen, so Robert Owen was basically a mill owner, right? So when he was a cotton mill owner, basically, all right? So when he saw the socialist tendencies was spreading throughout the European continent, and just in order to avoid any violent revolution from the working class, he kind of brought certain amendment in his thinking, right? He just propounded the idea of cooperative movements, right? Where entire mill will be hold or owned in corporation, and profit will be shared among the workers and the owners as well, right? In equitable manner. So this is a kind of golden mean between capitalism and socialism, right? But his idea was kind of peaceful. He never resorted to violent method. He always resorted to very, very peaceful transaction. French revolutionary proposed violent method and British socialists proposed peaceful manner, right? Now again, here in socialism there will be two schools. One will be French revolutionaries and other will be the people who, the socialists who were hailing from Britain. So the people, or the British people, they mainly propounded the idea of peaceful methods, right? Peaceful methods, that capitalist can be done away with in peaceful manner. It is possible that even with peaceful manner we can get done away with the capitalist ideas and the extreme exploitation of the workers, right? The example I have given you is of Robert Owen, who himself was a mill owner, and he was kind of mutually agreed that yes, we will kind of develop a cooperative system of mills where profits will be equally distributed among the workers, right? So this was his idea, which was very, very peaceful. इसका basic idea ये था कि एक मिल है, राइट, उसको एक कोऑपरेटिव मॉडल में होल्ड करेंगे, ओन करेंगे. अगर उसका प्रॉफिट एक्स अमाउंट है तो वो एक्स अमाउंट लोगों के बीच में, वर्कर्स के बीच में इक्विटेबली डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर दिया जाएगा, राइट. सो दिस इज काइंड ऑफ पीसफुल वे. But again, the people who were hailing or belonging to French class right? Or French school, their means was very revolutionary. Why? Again, go back to French Revolution, which it was a violent overthrow of the regime, right? That is why they always resorted to more revolutionary methods, right, rather than the peaceful method. They proposed appealing to the conscience of the capitalist, right? Marx called them as utopians. So who proposed appealing to the capitalist class? Basically the British school, right? They always propounded the peaceful method, and Marx here is saying that they are kind of appealing to the conscience of the capitalist class, and Marx called them as utopian because Marx believed that socialism cannot come by their method. What was their method? Peaceful method, basically, right? That is why Marx basically calls them as utopian. What is utopian? If I have to say you, basically हवाबाज, right? और सपनों की दुनिया में रह रहे हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि मार्क्स स्ट्रांगली मानता था कि सोशलिज्म विदाउट रिवॉल्यूशन के लाया नहीं जा सकता, राइट? अगेन बेसिक आइडिया, देयर इज नो बर्थ विदाउट ब्लड. खून के बिना, ब्लड के बिना बर्थ कभी पॉसिबल हो ही नहीं सकता, राइट? दैट इज सिमिलरली रिवॉल्यूशन के बिना सिस्टम और कैपिटलिस्ट एस्टैब्लिशमेंट को ओवरथ्रो नहीं किया जा सकता. एंड अगर वो उसे ओवरथ्रो नहीं करेंगे तो सोशलिज्म या कम्युनिज्म को हम कैसे एस्टैब्लिश करेंगे? So this is the basic idea, and that is why he calls the British school as utopians. The revolutionaries were ready for action but lacked the understanding, right? The revolutionaries, the French revolutionaries, they basically were ready for the action, right? Energetic, vigor, they were always ready for the action, but they lacked the understanding. What is understanding? The theory, right? Here Marx is trying to give importance to theory, right? Theory plus action. The British school, they were having the theory, but they did not have any action, right? They were resorting to the peaceful ways. But here the revolutionaries, they were ready for the action. वो action के लिए हमेशा ready थे, but they did not have a strong reason, a strong theory, right? And if one will not have a strong theory, it will always become a one-man game, right? If I have to give you an example, the best example that comes to my mind is Naxalism movement, right? Why Naxalism movement? Naxalism movement के पास हमेशा एक्शन तो रहता है. They always kind of resort to revolutionary methods, violent methods, right? In areas like southern Chhattisgarh and etc. Always violence, but they do not have any strong reason or theory behind them to make their movement a more sustainable one, right? They have kind of very extremist ideology, which is not practical, which is not praxis, right? So they were always ready but for action, but they lacked the understanding. Similarly, those who were trying to bring socialism through peaceful means, they lacked both the understanding as well as action. How they lacked understanding? Because they thought that the revolution, the change can be brought without what? Without violent means. And this is how they lack the understanding. Why? Because there is no birth without blood as well as action. They were never resorting to any action like revolution. Hence Marx suggests that they were utopians, and Marx is a science because Marxism is praxis. Why Marxism is science? Because it is praxis. Why praxis? Because it is a action based on theory. It is golden mean of both action plus theory, or theory plus action, right? That is why it is scientific, it is more pragmatic, it is more beneficial, right? Marx does not believe in the concept of conscience. He does not believe in God or idea, right? It is not just to say, it is not just here to say God did not, Marx did not believe in God or idea. It has an essence. Marx was never someone who believed in ideas, right? Ideas. He was more action oriented. He was more focused on the action, right? To bring change through action. Did you remember in the introduction slide, I have told you him being joining a press, right? Why? Because he wanted to bring change through his writing, through his revolutionary writing. That is why he never believed in appealing the conscience. He always believed in the action. He did not believe in idea or God. He always believed in the action. Action plus truth, or truth plus action. Action leading to truth, or truth leading to the action. Hence, there is no point appealing to God or conscience. Philosophers until now have only interpreted the world, but what matters is to change it. Hence, Marx suggests workers of the world unite. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose except your chains. We have enough of theories. We have enough of ideas. But this is the time that workers of the world unite, because you have nothing to lose except your chains. And what are chains? Your religion, your nation, which is causing extreme exploitation upon you. And that is what Marx aims for, which is communism. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose except your chains. And there you will achieve a system of communism. And that is how you will live with dignity. You will safeguard your human dignity and individuality. With this, we are done with the introduction, or the first part of Marx. I am hoping that on this auspicious day of Republic Day, you guys have enjoyed the lecture on one of the very, very astounding thinker, that is Karl Marx. We will carry forward with his doctrine and ideologies and idea, which will ultimately lead us to the establishment of Marxism school of political theory. So with this, thank you for watching, people, and ensure to show your love by subscribing to the channel, that is UPSC by Naman Raj Gupta, and also like and share the video with your close ones. Thank you.